Sando Trini, a San Fernando story, the shot from the San Fernando hill. Holiday time was upon us once more. We had been going to my mother's relatives for some time, and mother knew that we ate like a horde of locusts. We were eating everything in sight. We were also growing out of our school clothes and church shoes. She decided that it was time to give her American relatives in Moruga a break. We were going to spend some time with relatives on my father's side of the family. It was time to go to our grandmother's house in Piparo, where we were welcome because my father was the first of my grandmother's three sons. On the way to our grandmother's house, we saw many small craters at the side of the road. The holes in the ground bubbled and made loud noises. They spouted mud and dirt, which coated the nearby banana leaves with a thick gray mud. Where the mud had dried, we saw rows of dusty banana trees. Even the asphalt on the road seemed softer than the surface of the streets. In San Fernando, we saw tire tracks on the road and humps and depressions in the black pitch surface. My father said that those were mud volcanoes and that they ran underground all the way to Princess Town, where they became a part of the Devil's Woodyard. We nudged each other and whispered our concern about the bubbling mud holes because we were not yet convinced that it was safe to be so close to them. They spewed water on the side of the road and made a sound like very thick porridge boiling in a pot. Plap, plap, plop, plop. We had been on this road before, but as we were getting older and more inquisitive, we noticed these muddy pools of liquid like we never did before. It seemed that we were paying more attention to everything, and gurgling pools of water seemed dangerous. Although my father tried to convince us that they were harmless, he said that he walked past these vents every day as a young boy and thought nothing of them, but there was nothing in San Fernando to compare to these water devils. Further along the way, my father showed us the Piparo Roman Catholic or RC school, which he had attended as a young boy, and about a quarter of a mile past the school was my grandmother's house. The house sat on a few acres of land, which was covered with every fruit tree you could imagine. We spent the week enjoying the fruits that only Piparo forest could provide. We had tonka beans, banga or gru beef, sapadilla, kayamit, silk figs, balada, cashews, guava, pewa, popo, tamarind, star apple, lele, chinet, hog plum, dongs, banana, custard apple, zaboka or avocado, jamun, grapefruit, orange, pomerac, padu, sour cherry, gris beef or googaloo, also coconut, soursop, watermelon, sugar apple, tangerines, plums, governor plums, and varieties of mangoes. The mangoes came in so many different shapes, sizes, and tastes. In Piparo, we had long mango or mango vere, Dudu's mango, calabash, turpentine, rose, and ice cream mangoes, starch mango, Julie mango, and hog mango. The sour orange trees bore the roughest looking oranges on the island of Trinidad. The skin of the orange was very thick and lumpy, and the juice was extremely sour. These oranges were so acidic that they were used in place of vinegar in many applications. They made very tart lemonade and were also used to clean fish and to disinfect household utensils. The acid from these sour oranges was strong enough to dissolve the aluminum pots my father made at Nurse's Foundry on Broadway in San Fernando. While in Piparo, we gorged on as much fruit as we could, but our main meal was yam and cassava. Our special meals were boiled yams and saltfish, and green figs or bananas and saltfish. We had boiled yam, roasted yam, fried yam, and yam soup. We had boiled cassava, roasted cassava, fried cassava, and cassava bread. Our grandmother was known in Piparo as Mother Simon, as she was a member of the Spiritual Baptist Church. She was one of the shouters. We had arrived in time for one of her annual Thanksgiving feasts. We sat on the floor and clapped our hands while we sang along with our cousin Doris, who lived with Grandma and who helped to prepare food for the guests. After an hour of singing and praising the Most High, Grandma dipped her index finger into a saucer filled with olive oil and drew a cross on each of our foreheads. Everyone was then given a small bag of chili bibi, which was powdered parched corn mixed with brown sugar, and a bag of salted whole kernel parched corn. The freshly baked sweetbread gave off an aroma of vanilla mixed with tonka bean essence. She broke the bread and gave each person a small piece while she sang the Thanksgiving song, Break Bread and Rejoice. Break bread and rejoice. She explained to us that the breaking of bread symbolized the occasion of peace, love, and togetherness, and that her Thanksgiving Day was her way of connecting to the Heavenly Father. That special day was the only time we saw Grandma smile, and our only regret was that our mother was not there with us, as she was still persona non grata. Grandma fed us and treated us well, but she absolutely hated my mother. In fact, she said that she hated the very ground my mother walked on. My mother walked a lot, and I wondered how my grandmother could hate that much dirt. She made no secret of the fact that she disapproved of my father's choice of a wife. She was disappointed that her son had married someone from Moruga, a descendant of the Americans, and that my mother came from a family she didn't know. She was pleased with the length of my mother's hair because my mother's hair fell past her shoulders, but she hated my mother's dark skin. It was rumored that she told someone that my mother was too black to be her daughter in law. That was very confusing to us as they both appeared to have the same complexion. But such statements were common in old San Fernando and throughout Trinidad in those days. My father was caught in the middle of this conundrum because he loved both his mother and his wife. He tried his best to keep our mother and our grandmother apart, but when he failed to separate them, we witnessed a very angry confrontation between two people we loved. My grandmother often visited our next door neighbor, and we could see her relaxing in a rocking chair. This infuriated my mother because grandma had stopped coming to our house a very long time ago. As when we assume a return to San Fernando, we brought back bags of ground provisions, but we had no meat. My father prepared to go hunting and said to my mother, cook some blue metal and have another pot with seasoning on standby. Blue metal was the name we gave to the deshane from Peparo, which, when it was cooked, changed from white to a blue gray color. It actually looked like chunks of marbled aluminum. My father made preparations for the Manitou hunt by clearing his carbide lantern. The lamp consisted of two covered cylinders screwed together, which he clipped to his belt. The bottom cylinder contained pieces of solid calcium carbide, while the top cylinder was filled with water. A needle valve at the bottom or the upper cylinder controlled the flow of water onto the chunks of carbide. He ignited the flammable gas produced at a reflector, which he made from an old car headlight. The reflector was clipped to a headband, while the gas tanks were clipped onto a belt. This contraption produced a dazzling white light, which could be seen for miles. In old San Fernando, children used pieces of carbide moistened with saliva to produce the explosive gas in lengths of bamboo. We lit the gas with a three plumes match to create a very loud explosion. We called this pastime busting bamboo. After testing the carbide lantern, my father picked up his hunting bags, strapped his cutlass to his waist, shouldered his 12 gauge shotgun, and walked north on Mariette Street towards Coffee Street. He crossed onto Carib Street. Then he began to climb the 300 steps of the San Fernando Hill. It was a very dark night, and we were able to see flashes of light from his lantern when we stood in front of our house. The rays of light reflected off the top branches of the mango trees, and our eyes followed the progress of the hunt. We knew that he would make a stop at Tante Leon's house, where she would give him a cup of her special black coffee, which the Martin family offered to any hunter on their way to the top of the hill. We eventually returned to the yard and sat around the fire at the side of our house. We stared at the orange flames as they danced around the blackened pot filled with dasheen. By then, we had used up the charcoal we bought from Miss Holder on Drayton Street and the coals we bought from Miss Bumpy, who lived at the corner of Clare and Cooper Streets. My job was to keep the fire going, but I was told to use twigs. We had to save the pieces of precious charcoal. Lying close to the fire was another pot containing seasoning and was covered with a circular metal plate called a tawa or baking stone. The seasoning was a special blend of herbs used to cook wild meat like manikou. We had the big West plans for an animal, which was still feasting on mangoes, the high in the treetops on the San Fernando Hill. Manikou or possums were easy targets because when they were exposed by a bright light, they froze in place. So we knew that my father would be returning home soon with at least one. The youngest of my siblings was sleepy and began yawning, but none of us left the group to go into the house to rest. No one wanted to miss the sound of the gunshot from the San Fernando Hill. While we waited, Mother folded pieces of the Trinidad Royal Gazette to form a pot holder and removed the heavy pot of dasheen from the fire. We were waiting for that moment because we then had the smoldering embers to ourselves to roast chenette and chatan seeds. We roasted those seeds and ears of sweet corn, and the aroma of parched seeds permeated the night air and lingered in our nostrils. Everything smelled so good to hungry young um, children. We were in San Fernando, but we were experiencing the same joys and the same hardships as children of families in Cedros, Pipero, Princetown, Malik, and in the hills to the east of Port of Spain. We were doing things which drew us all closer together as one. Mother reminded us that we should keep our chatter to a minimum as we were still listening for the shot from the hill. Sando. Suddenly we heard a muffled sound, and it was not as loud as we had anticipated. It sounded like a balloon bursting in the street, but it was enough to put smiles on our faces. We knew that we were going to eat soon because the shot meant that one mango fed manikou was being placed in our father's crocus bag. Mother felt that it was time to celebrate, so she cut up pieces of hot dasheen. She blew on them to ensure that it would not burn the mouth of her youngest child. That hot dasheen tasted better than anything Madame Lee had for sale in her shop. We couldn't get anything from the shop until we paid what we already owed because we had exceeded our credit limit some time ago. We heard the sound of another shot from the hill, and that one appeared to sound louder, maybe because our ears were tuned to receive it. It was more of an explosive sound. Boom! We jumped up and cheered, while toasted to our good luck with sour orange juice made from piparo oranges. We hugged each other and danced around the coal pot, and we shook those who had fallen asleep and told them the good news, which was that we would be cooking not one but two possums. That meant more meat for each of that. So, Vidortif were, yeah, looking back, we assumed that our father never missed a shot, and that two shots meant two possums in his back. My father walked down the steps of the San Fernando Hill with only his headlamp to guide him. He carried his shotgun and a bag with two heavy manikou. He made his way very carefully down the concrete steps, all 300 of them. He carried his hunting gear on his back and his shotgun in one hand. He removed the reflector of the carbide lantern from his head and held it in his hand to light up the row of steps which stretched far below him. He knew the risk he was taking, but he also knew that we were waiting for him to return safely with his catch. That was just one more thing he had to do to feed his family. When my father was back on Carib Street, he crossed Coffee Street and entered Upper Marriott Street. He soon crossed Clare Street and entered Lower Marriott Street, now Cooper Street. From there, it took just a few minutes for him to reach home. He dumped the two plump manikou onto banana or fig leaves my mother had placed on the ground. He removed the iron grate we used to roast our chenet and châtain seeds. He threw one of the manikou directly onto the glowing coals. The smell of burning hair from the marsupial filled our nostrils, but we enjoyed the smell. The smoke brought us closer to our dasheen and curried manikou meal. When the hair was burnt black, father placed the second possum on the coals and allowed the fire to do its job. He then took them both to the nearby standpipe and scraped them clean with a knife until the skin was white and smooth and free of any hair. He then gave them to mother. Mother then cut a piparo sour orange in two and used the pieces to scrub the inner parts and the skin of the manikou. When she washed both manikou, they gleamed as white as a pair of washikongs or sneakers we wore to school. Mother prepared the edible parts, while father gave the heart and liver to Cherry, our pet dog. She was a very loyal, non pedigree pothound. When father returned from burying the entrails along the back fence, the pot was sizzling and steam was escaping from the sides of the cover. The hot cooking oil was bubbling throughout the chunks of meat when mother carefully removed the lid and poured in a packet of chief curry powder. She also added what was left of a pack of turban curry powder. The smell of curry, onions, garlic, and bandania or cilantro was overpowering. Those aromas will be in my memory forever. It was a wholesome and joyous time I shared with my family that night. Maybe it was hard times, but to us, it was just a fun and exciting night. Mother volunteered me to say the grace before meals. My siblings loved to hear me do this because I made up rhyming phrases and I did it very fast. Regardless of what we ate or when we ate, we always gave thanks. On that night, I said these words: God is good, God is great. Thanks for the manikou on my plate. Mother pursed her lips while father frowned. They were both trying to contain their laughter. My siblings giggled as usual. We ate the meal, hot as we could stand it, because we were starved by then. We drank sour orange juice and water from the standpipe in the yard, and we were thoroughly satisfied. We washed all the cooking utensils under the standpipe. Then we washed up and prepared for bed. We went to bed that night with our bellies full and our hearts overflowing with joy. We had to wait for the sound of the shot from the hill, and we had to wait until late at night to have dinner. But our parents provided us with a tasty meal and an exciting end to the day. Life was not easy for our parents, and it was not for their parents. But as children, we saw fun and excitement in everything they did with us and for us, to be continued.